Survival horror has continuously evolved since Resident Evil 4 revolutionized it with intense over-the-shoulder action in 2005. Numerous games have further contributed to the genre's evolution in the years since then, chief among them being Dead Space from Visceral Games and publisher Electronic Arts. A group of the sci-fi horror game's original creators challenged themselves to walk that line again and usher in another new take on the genre. They attempted to do so by once more exploring the terrors of outer space, specifically the isolation and hopelessness that such a setting invites. The project in question, the Callisto Protocol, thus bore all the hallmarks of a Dead Space spiritual successor, a dream come true for fans who'd been burned by the franchise's turn towards prioritizing action over survival mechanics. But Callisto Protocol operated on its own terms in a fictional universe grounded in reality. As a result, developer Striking Distance Studios leaned heavily into realism, focusing its technological efforts on graphics and facial rendering that looked nigh imperceptible from their real-world counterparts. Critics and players would later argue that the studio's insistence on accomplishing next-gen visual fidelity superseded the need to produce a high-quality game worth playing. The title received critical lashings for feeling bereft of original ideas. Repetitious gameplay and cheap scares weighed it down further, even for those who enjoyed it. The harshest criticism labeled the Callisto Protocol a weak attempt at recapturing Dead Space's otherworldly magic. Regardless of public perception, though, unchecked ambition, development crunch, and bullish sales projections derailed this daring adventure on Jupiter's second-largest moon. This is the tragedy of the Callisto Protocol. Want even more content from us? By joining us on Patreon, you'll be the first to access our newest videos, in addition to exclusive content and rewards you won't find anywhere else. Hit the link in the description and become part of the community today. Thank you. Your support is what keeps us going.
You know, at the beginning of the movie, it's going to be an hour and a half. You know, at the end of an hour and a half, I'm done. But with a game, you don't necessarily know how long it's going to go on. So, you know, we can continue to scare them for a long time.
Already an industry veteran, Glenn Schofield's first playthrough of Resident Evil 4 sparked an idea that further raised his profile just a few years later. In reminiscing on the seminal experience during an Inverse interview, Schofield recalled wishing RE4's player character, Leon Kennedy, could move and shoot at the same time. The desire to shuffle Leon's stationary feet influenced key Dead Space mechanics. Once the hero's feet were in motion mid-combat, for instance, Schofield realized that moving backwards and shooting while enemies kept crawling forward would enhance the fear factor. He was right. Dead Space launched in 2009 to rave reviews that applauded its reinvention of survival horror. After shipping the bestseller, Schofield left for greener pastures. He co-founded Sledgehammer Games with Michael Condrey, then helped helm the development of another groundbreaking release, the third Modern Warfare. But after directing Call of Duty World War II in 2017, Schofield felt compelled to take his talents elsewhere yet again. An interest in revisiting survival horror planted him on the doorstep of PUBG Corp., now known as Krafton. The Dead Space creator approached the PUBG maker with two combined pitches. One constituted a basic idea for the Callisto Protocol. The other centered on Striking Distance, the new development house he envisioned as the home of the most terrifying game on next-gen platforms. According to Schofield, Krafton gave him the green light and let him assemble a team to begin work on the ambitious project. As the ink dried on the deal in June 2019, Krafton and Schofield made their partnership known by detailing Striking Distance's establishment in San Ramon, California. A video announcement from the founder additionally teased the studio's first game, which he called an original narrative experience in the PUBG universe. On top of informing the public, the reveal doubled as a recruiting tool. Striking Distance's website featured job listings for game designers proficient in single-player, multiplayer, and live service development. Notably, former Dead Space executive and Visceral GM Steve Papoutsis had already joined Schofield, serving as the chief development officer at Striking Distance. All told, the team staffed up quickly, with over 50 people signing on before the COVID-19 pandemic forced them to reassess working conditions. Between the June 2019 announcement and December 2020, the headcount rose to about 150 developers, 25 to 30 of whom were from Schofield's old stomping grounds at Visceral and Sledgehammer. The Visceral veterans in particular included ex-Dead Space designer Scott Whitney and Christopher Stone, who'd previously been animation director for the Dead Space and Call of Duty series. Suffice it to say, Striking Distance gathered many of the ingredients necessary to build a worthy successor to Schofield's original sci-fi horror brand. But improving upon a pioneering blueprint was easier said than done. On the heels of producing 3 Call of Duty titles, Glenn Schofield aimed to take the lessons learned and explore new designs and concepts. The developer told Polygon that, above all else, he felt it was past time to revisit sci-fi horror. Nascent discussions about the project emphasized the game's ability to induce real terror. These conversations naturally evolved into questions concerning the ideal setting, story, and mechanics. A familiarity with space horror wasn't the sole reason for the move towards the cosmos, since themes of isolation and hopelessness guided the decision as well. Schofield argued these feelings in tandem spurred the mind's consideration of worst-case scenarios. Thus, isolating players from hope became the primary goal. A penitentiary on a faraway moon lent itself well to a narrative that experimented with such conceits. The story Striking Distance crafted positioned players in the role of an inmate trying to escape Black Iron Prison, a maximum security corrections facility situated on Callisto, Jupiter's second largest moon. Learning about the celestial body's subsurface ocean and cold cratered exterior excited the developers, who decided on grounding Callisto Protocol's fiction in reality. Since Callisto could conceivably be colonized in the future, the studio set the game in 2320. And modeled some aspects of the experience after the moon's real-life properties. The enemies, sentient zombies called the biophage, were similarly based on actual science, their grotesque designs inspired by various true-to-life infections. Marrying clinical references to practical effects begat genuinely terrifying creature designs, though each one clung to physical remnants of their humanity. But selling the terror with atmosphere and tension constituted the real challenge. Schofield and Company operated on the belief that survival horror lived and died by tension, which could stem from any number of sources and affect players differently. As such, audio and visual elements played essential parts in the design of Callisto Protocol's beat-to-beat action. The same applied to the liberal use of gore, whose deep system Striking Distance spent upwards of 2 years iterating on. Much of that dedication stemmed from the technological implications of new-gen hardware, as the PS5 and Xbox Series consoles provided raw power not available during the original Dead Space days. Suddenly, the act of blowing chunks out of enemies could be enhanced with an unparalleled level of depth. Character director Glauco Longhi noted in an inside look from Ars Technica that the team built the gore system to be accessible for the animation and design departments. Various in-house disciplines tinkered with the functionality to its fullest extent, such that mechanics grew atop each other. For example, spikes and deadly spinning fan blades littered the game world, proving beneficial when picking up and throwing enemies with the telekinesis tool. Players could then employ that skill to turn foes into meat shields, capable of blocking projectile attacks from other combatants. Over-the-top gore fulfilled only a subsection of the overall thrills and chills. A borderline obsessive attention to detail fueled by new technologies received the lion's share of Striking Distance's time and effort.
Did you see that?
The studio adhered to the maxim that games exist at the intersection of art, design, and technology. Interactive entertainment, accordingly, operates at its best when these disciplines work in concert. However, the technical facets of Callisto Protocol's production held a bit more weight throughout development, primarily due to a laser focus on fully immersing players. From the team's perspective, deeply engrossed users were more likely to explore every detail and ponder the mystery, thereby becoming increasingly invested in the story. Glenn Schofield and his crew believed delivering hyper-realistic graphics represented a key component of clearing this particular bar. A modified version of Unreal Engine 4.27 powered the third-person shooter. One modification revolved around the popular engine's lighting and shadow techniques, which developers found too restrictive for their game's corridor-laden levels. Since contrast and occlusion engendered great horror, Unreal's 4 shadow-generated lights were shelved in favor of a reworked system allowing for a greater number of lower-cost lights. Striking Distance similarly built a bespoke hybrid ray-traced shadow solution to supplant Unreal's ray tracing technology and guarantee ray-traced shadow details enhanced overall scene quality. According to Chief Technical Officer Mark James, Unreal Engine 5 elements also entered the mix during the final stretch of development, all in an attempt to amplify the tech investment that helped achieve photorealistic environments and characters. The graphics were designed to be so lifelike, in fact, that James told TechRadar, the Callisto Protocol featured the most realistic characters ever seen in a game. Even the eyeballs of characters boasted ray-traced reflections, he claimed, emphasizing the importance of these tiny details. Of course, such dedication additionally applied to facial models, efforts managed through a satellite team of 10 renderers in Spain led by Call of Duty veteran Jorge Jimenez. Reportedly, Jimenez took the rendering seriously enough to send side-by-side photos of protagonist Jacob Lee and the actor who portrayed him, Josh Duhamel. If someone easily spotted the difference between the game model and a Duhamel picture, Jimenez would further refine his work. To Striking Distance, this undertaking wasn't for naught. James argued convincing facial models heightened the player's connection to the experience, given the power required for the human brain to assess faces. By that logic, the audience wouldn't buy into a game world's authenticity without believable-looking characters. Shortly after the title's announcement, Schofield insisted the fidelity often proved so dazzling that he instructed developers to dial back the detail. Boasting about the visual quality in an IGN interview, the executive admitted that the extent of Striking Distance's emphasis on fidelity periodically slowed down production. A taste of what this commitment promised publicly debuted during the 2020 Game Awards. The Callisto Protocol entered the spotlight in a world premiere trailer at the Game Awards in December 2020, promising a blend of horror, action, and immersive storytelling that would hit store shelves in 2022 for PC and consoles. As they did in the announcement of their partnership, Krafton and Striking Distance confirmed the survival horror title fit within the world of PUBG. Glenn Schofield later explained how the brand synergy came about, and in doing so, divulged that Krafton had big writers fleshing out a PUBG backstory before he came along, complete with a timeline outlining in-universe wars. It was the publisher that proposed sitting Callisto Protocol on this timeline 300 years into the future. Regardless of the PUBG-related implications, industry pundits and enthusiasts gave high praise to the reveal trailer, particularly its visuals and atmospheric tension. Classic Dead Space fans were beyond enthralled by the Krafton-backed project, and the developers never shied away from the comparisons. Schofield addressed the blatant similarities across several interviews, once telling Polygon that Dead Space's and Callisto Protocol's shared aesthetic design illustrated his particular style. Steve Papoutis echoed this sentiment when speaking with VentureBeat, saying the number of Dead Space alumni that had been recruited meant the pillars of the seminal series easily seeped into the studio's DNA. Still, the executives maintained Callisto Protocol would stand on its own merits. The Game Awards showcase and subsequent December 2020 interviews marked the last official communique developers shared before going dark for well over a year. After all, the crew had their work cut out for them. Work-from-home mandates prompted by the spread of COVID-19 didn't help ease the load either. Remotely staffing up and building a multi-million-dollar game proved trying. Instead of housing 10 dev kits in a single office, the studio had to secure approximately 150 dev kits. Training recruits in new tools from afar further complicated the day-to-day. Fortunately, Krafton's resources alongside mocap and cinematics assistance from PlayStation's Visual Arts Services Group helped alleviate some stress.
Leia, we need to talk.
Can I do it again? You don't do this like this, do you? This is not an iPhone.
Early in Striking Distance's long period of silence, the studio unveiled its strategic partnership with Skybound Entertainment, the multi-platform entertainment company behind The Walking Dead. Skybound's expertise in building horror-themed transmedia properties was viewed as the perfect home for the Callisto Protocol's hopeful multimedia adventures. But the next time the public received an update on the game itself came in May 2022, at which point Glenn Schofield mentioned the title's separation from the PUBG universe. Severing the link between the two properties became a necessity once the horror game's narrative expanded in a direction that no longer befit a shared universe. At the very least, eager gamers still had a brand new adventure to look forward to, though Schofield muddied the waters just months before release. Schofield posted a tweet in September 2022 that onlookers perceived as a glorification of crunch culture. The studio executive revealed striking distance staffers worked 12 to 15 hours a day, 6 to 7 days a week of their own accord. This is gaming. Hard work, the tweet read in part, causing widespread backlash from critics, fans, and members of the development community. He quickly deleted the post, then issued a statement clarifying that he valued passion and creativity, not long hours. Further addressing the matter weeks later, Schofield acknowledged his managerial mistakes. The studio's relatively small crew made good headway throughout production, but an unspecified blunder on his part during the home stretch resulted in Callisto Protocol developers working more than they should have. Discourse concerning the ethics of crunch resurfaced when the horror title landed on PC, PlayStation, and Xbox platforms in December 2022 in a state of disrepair. Performance issues beset the PC version, and console players had to contend with game-breaking crashing errors before patches rectified the problem. Combat-specific adjustments were also rolled out in the days following the game's debut. But these fixable missteps hardly constituted the only reasons for Callisto Protocol's below-average reception. Reviewers and players alike agreed that while the excessive gore and stunning visuals kept them engaged, questionable design choices, cumbersome gameplay, and other annoyances too often hindered the experience. The most scathing critiques regarded it as an inferior Dead Space clone. Callisto Protocol had its fans, though, those who appreciated Striking Distance's attempt to revitalize a subgenre of survival horror that had long been abandoned. Its wins and losses were quickly overshadowed in the wake of news that executives had left about 20 former developers out of the credits. Reportedly, the list of omitted people included directors, team leads, senior staffers, and other employees who'd contributed to the game's creation for 12 months or more. One anonymous source told GamesIndustry.biz the issue reeked of higher-ups playing favorites. Ex-developers who crunched on the project felt especially slighted, with one person positing that anyone who didn't stay through launch was punished with a credit omission for not going the extra mile. There were additionally claims condemning Striking Distance's contradictory approach to crunch. Allegedly, representatives would promise to address workload concerns, then later commend employees who worked extra hours. In spite of the crunch-related woes, multiple sources enjoyed their tenure at the outfit. One such person said friction only arose on exit, which to them explained the blatant credit omissions. Another disgruntled ex-developer validated this notion, sharing their belief that the Sledgehammer guys liked loyalty and could be punitive if they detected a lack of it. Strangely enough, not even a year would pass before key executives departed the company as well. Despite the mystery shrouding it at the time, Krafton's May 2022 investor relations briefing spoke highly of the Striking Distance endeavor. Most notably, the publisher boasted of the Callisto Protocol's quadruple A quality, a descriptor Microsoft previously used for select first-party titles. Quadruple A lacked a firm definition, yet it quickly became clear that Callisto Protocol failed to achieve the sales expected of such a title. According to Korean outlet K-Vibe, the production budget ran north of 200 billion won, the equivalent of $162 million. By January 2023, its commercial performance suggested the game would struggle to make a profit as the number of units sold limped towards the 2 million milestone. Samsung Securities reported that Krafton projected Striking Distance's debut to move at least 5 million copies. The publisher's stock price took a beating weeks prior when review scores trended below expectations. Dr. Serkan Toto, CEO of Japanese consultancy firm Kantan Games, claimed Krafton's investors had hoped the Callisto Protocol would become another pillar of the PUBG maker's business. and for several months it was treated like an IP with a bright future, courtesy of the studio fulfilling its post-launch support plans. A $30 season pass offered new skins, death animations, difficulty modes, and story DLC entitled Final Transmission. On its own, the latter bore a $15 price tag and reviewed as poorly as the main game. Worst still, the expansion ended on a cliffhanger that may go unresolved. But if the mystery behind Black Iron Prison does receive a second chance, key creative forces are unlikely to be involved. 32 Striking Distance employees were laid off in August 2023. A spokesperson for Krafton insisted that strategic changes would realign the studio's priorities to better position it for future success. Founder Glenn Schofield didn't see himself as part of the equation, given his departure from the development house 1 month later. In a statement to Bloomberg, Krafton said the studio executive left to pursue new opportunities. Schofield himself called the exit bittersweet, but assured fans that Striking Distance would remain in excellent hands, with Steve Papoutsis assuming the role of CEO.
Hi everyone, we want to show you something we've been working on. It's not the Callisto Protocol 2, it's our take on a super fast action roguelike, and we're calling it Project Birdseye.
With the Callisto Protocol's poor commercial performance and much of the studio's key talent having moved on to other ventures both in and outside the gaming industry, many were surprised when Striking Distance revealed that it was developing a new game in March 2024 through a video on its official YouTube channel. Even more surprising than the announcement, however, was the game itself, a colorful roguelike dungeon crawler reminiscent of titles like Hades. Dubbed Redacted and set within the Callisto Protocol universe, the title saw players don the role of a Black Iron prison guard who must reach the facility's last escape pod. Striking Distance clarified that, despite sharing its world and setting, Redacted was not a direct sequel to the 2022 game, and noted that the studio also had a different project in the works. When it eventually came out in October 2024 on PC, PlayStation 5, and Xbox Series, the roguelike garnered favorable reception, even outperforming the original game in terms of review scores. Sadly, this success did not serve as a boon for the franchise or the remaining members of Striking Distance Studios. Just 2 months before Redacted hit digital storefronts, Glenn Schofield sat down with Dan Allen Gaming and discussed what went wrong with the Callisto Protocol. According to Schofield, the game's first year of development progressed smoothly, but trouble began when Krafton abruptly pushed for an earlier release date. To meet the publisher's revised deadline, the studio felt forced to expand its team, causing development costs to soar. Schofield also revealed that after Krafton went public and a board of directors became involved, internal pressure mounted significantly. He described the final year of the Callisto Protocol's development as the worst period of his career, expressing regret that he hadn't pushed back against higher-ups and delayed the game to ensure a more polished release. Despite these struggles, Schofield remains proud of the project and believes a sequel should be made. Krafton CEO Jin Chanan shared a different perspective in a September 2024 interview with Game Developer. When reflecting on the challenges faced during the Callisto Protocol's development, he acknowledged that hard lessons were learned, but suggested the game struggled mostly due to its lack of innovation. Jin believed the Callisto Protocol's failure to stand out from the competitors hurt its reception and expressed regret over not pushing Striking Distance to refine the project's core mechanics earlier in production. Despite Jin's remarks, the game went on to receive a significant update in November 2024, which made it one of the few titles to officially support resolutions up to 8K on the PlayStation 5 Pro, suggesting Krafton still had some faith in the IP. These hopes were soon dashed when in February 2025, art director Jesse Lee announced via LinkedIn that Striking Distance had suffered another round of layoffs. According to Lee, most of the original members who had been with the team since its inception were no longer there, though a Krafton spokesperson assured PC Gamer that Striking Distance remained operational and the layoffs would not impact ongoing projects. Thus, with Striking Distance having shifted its focus and much of its original creative team now scattered, the Callisto Protocol seems destined to remain a standalone experiment. What was once positioned as the start of a franchise now lingers in uncertainty, its universe and the horrors of Black Iron Prison likely sealed away for good.
I'll see you on the other side.
Thank you for watching our video. We'd like to take this time to thank, by name, the generous Patreons who have pledged to our Hall of Fame reward tier. Disco Cobra 2013, Ice Cold Water $1, Karu, Sauerkraut, Shuan Chinwin, Fat Green Dragon, and those currently subscribed to our producer reward tier: Dave Oshry, DCX NG, DJ Redden, Edward Rains, Fallen Asterisk, Jaguar Knot, Jan Christofferson, Crash Course, Matthew McLaughlin, Pierre Burrell, C. Rob Kaysen. If you enjoy our content, please consider subscribing to our channel and backing us on Patreon.